Dr. Hansol Kim stood at his office window in the International Space Research Center, looking at the morning sky over Seoul. The sun was rising, but something else caught his attention. 3 bright lights moving in perfect formation. They were not stars or planes. They were the ships of the stellar Commonwealth delegation, coming to Earth for the first time. Hansol straightened his white lab coat and checked his reflection in the window. At 35 years old, he was the youngest head of Earth's Xenobiology department. Today would test everything he knew about alien life. The ships landed in the center's special landing area. They were silver and smooth, shaped like teardrops. Hansol watched as 3 tall figures stepped out. They were the alien researchers he would work with, all female, all with pale blue skin that seemed to shine in the morning light. "Welcome to Earth," Hansol said as they approached. He bowed slightly, following the proper greeting protocol. The tallest alien stepped forward. "I am Liaison Officer Mira," she said. Her voice was clear but had a musical quality to it. "These are my colleagues, Luna and Nova." The other 2 nodded, but their faces showed no emotion. Hansol noticed how they looked around the research center. Their expressions made it clear. They were not impressed. Earth's best technology probably looked simple to them. "Your facility is quaint," Mira said, touching one of the metal walls. "I suppose it serves its purpose for your level of development." Hansol kept his face calm, though her words stung. "We have prepared your research stations," he said. "Would you like to see them?" As they walked through the building, the 3 aliens whispered to each other in their language. They laughed softly at the computer systems, the laboratory equipment, and even the way humans dressed. Hansol pretended not to notice. In the main laboratory, Hansol showed them their work areas. "Each station has been set up according to Commonwealth specifications," he explained. "We hope they meet your standards." Luna, the shortest of the 3, picked up a microscope. "How interesting," she said. "I haven't seen equipment this basic since my early school days." Nova and Mira laughed again. Hansol took a deep breath. "Perhaps you could show us how you would improve them," he suggested. "That is why you're here, isn't it? To help us learn." Mira stopped laughing and looked at him carefully. "Yes," she said slowly. "Though I wonder how much your species can really understand. You still reproduce naturally, correct? No genetic engineering, no artificial selection." "That's right," Hansol said. "We believe natural processes still have value." All 3 aliens exchanged looks of surprise and amusement. "Natural processes," Nova said. "Our society moved past those primitive methods centuries ago. We have perfected reproduction through science." Hansol nodded politely. "I look forward to learning about your methods," he said. "And perhaps you might learn something from ours as well." Mira raised an eyebrow. "I highly doubt that," she said. "But we will try to teach you what we can." She turned to her colleagues. "Let's begin our work. The sooner we start, the sooner we can help this developing species." As they set up their equipment, Hansol watched them quietly. He had expected their attitude. Many advanced species looked down on Earth. But he knew something they didn't. Sometimes the old ways held secrets that technology had forgotten. He would be patient. Time would show them the truth. He looked at his computer screen, which showed the aliens' initial medical scans. Something in the data caught his eye. He looked closer, then smiled slightly. This project might be more interesting than anyone expected. 2 weeks had passed since the alien researchers arrived at the International Space Research Center. The morning sun found Hansol already at work in his laboratory, reviewing overnight test results. He looked up as the 3 alien researchers entered the lab. "You're here early again, Dr. Kim," Mira said, her blue skin gleaming under the laboratory lights. "Don't humans need more sleep than this?" "Some of us choose to sleep less," Hansol replied, his eyes still on his work. "Especially when the research is interesting." Luna moved to her workstation, then stopped suddenly. She stared at her screen with wide eyes. "This is unexpected," she said. "The human cells we tested yesterday, they're still alive." Nova rushed to look at Luna's screen. "That's impossible. Human cells shouldn't survive exposure to our testing methods." Hansol walked over calmly. "Actually, human cells are quite adaptable. We evolved to survive in many different conditions." Mira joined them, her usual look of superiority replaced by confusion. "But our radiation levels should have destroyed these cells immediately. How are they not only surviving but growing?" "Perhaps," Hansol suggested, "there are things about human biology that your advanced science hasn't discovered yet." The three aliens exchanged troubled looks. This wasn't the first surprise they had encountered. Over the past 2 weeks, many of their tests had produced unexpected results. "Show us more," Mira demanded, trying to hide her interest. "What other tests have you run?" Hansol brought up more data on the main screen. "These are from various exposure tests. Notice how the human cells adapt and become stronger with each challenge." The aliens studied the results in silence. Hansol noticed how they stood closer to the screen than usual, their perfect posture forgotten in their fascination. "This shouldn't be possible," Nova whispered. "Our own cells don't show this kind of adaptation. We engineered that capability out of our species centuries ago, when we perfected our reproduction process." "Sometimes," Hansol said quietly, "what seems like an improvement can actually be a loss." Mira turned to him sharply. "Are you suggesting our advanced methods are flawed?" "Not flawed," Hansol said carefully. "Just different, and perhaps incomplete in some ways." Later that day, Hansol found Luna alone in the lab, running more tests. She didn't notice him at first, too absorbed in her work. He saw her touch her own arm, then look at the human cell samples with a strange expression. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Luna jumped slightly. "Yes, of course," she said quickly. "I was just comparing some readings." Hansol noticed she had been running tests on her own cellular structure. The results on her screen showed something interesting. Her cells were beginning to show slight changes, similar to the adaptive patterns in human cells. "Would you like to discuss what you found?" he offered. Luna hesitated. "No," she said finally. "Not yet. I need to verify these results first." She glanced at the door nervously. "Please don't mention this to Miro or Nova." Hansol nodded. "Your research is your own," he said. "But if you need help interpreting the data, I'm here." That evening, as Hansol prepared to leave, he saw all three aliens in deep discussion in their private room. They stopped talking when they saw him, but he had already noticed their worried expressions and the way they kept looking at their own hands, as if seeing them for the first time. Something was changing. Hansol could sense it in their questions, their looks, and their growing interest in human biology. The aliens who had arrived so confident in their superiority were beginning to wonder if they had missed something important in their rush to perfect their species through technology. Hansol smiled to himself as he left the building. Sometimes the best teacher was simple curiosity, and his alien visitors were becoming very curious indeed. 1 month into their stay on Earth, the three alien researchers sat in their private medical room at the research center. They had just finished their weekly health checks, a requirement from their home world. But today was different. The results on their screens made no sense. "Run the tests again," Mira ordered, her blue skin looking slightly paler than usual. "There must be an error." Luna typed quickly on her device, but the new results were the same. "No error," she said quietly. "Our genetic structure is changing." Nova paced the room, her usually perfect posture forgotten. "This is impossible. Our genetics were perfected centuries ago. They can't just change." "But they are changing," Luna insisted. "Look at these patterns. They're similar to—" She stopped, not wanting to finish the sentence. "Similar to what?" Mira demanded. "Similar to human adaptive patterns," Luna finished. "The same patterns we've been studying in Dr. Kim's lab." The three aliens looked at each other in silence. Their bodies, engineered to be perfect and unchanging, were doing something they never thought possible. They were adapting to Earth. A knock on the door made them jump. It was Hansol. "Is everything all right?" he asked, noticing their troubled faces. "I saw some unusual energy readings from your medical equipment." "Everything is fine," Mira said quickly, but her voice shook slightly. Hansol looked at their screens. His eyes widened as he understood the data. "Your cellular structure," he said. "It's becoming more flexible, more adaptable." "You cannot tell anyone about this," Nova said firmly. "If our government finds out." "I understand," Hansol said. "But may I help? This is my field of study, after all." The three aliens looked at each other again. Finally, Mira nodded. Hansol sat down at their computer. "Your bodies aren't just changing randomly," he explained as he studied the data. "They're activating old genetic patterns, ones your species must have had before artificial reproduction." "But why now?" Luna asked. "Why here?" "Earth's environment is different from your engineered worlds," Hansol said. "Here, life is constantly changing and adapting. Your bodies are remembering how to do the same." "This could ruin everything," Mira said. "Our society is built on the idea of genetic perfection. If they learn we can change." "Perhaps change isn't always bad," Hansol suggested gently. "Nature created these abilities for a reason." Later that evening, after the others had left, Luna stayed behind to talk to Hansol. "There's something else," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Something we didn't tell the others." She showed him another set of test results. Hansol read the data carefully. His eyes grew wide. "This shows compatibility," he said, "between human and your species' DNA." Luna nodded. "We thought our reproductive systems were too different, too engineered to ever work with another species. But now your bodies are remembering older patterns," Hansol finished. "Patterns that might allow natural reproduction. If our government discovers this, they will recall us immediately," Luna said. "They would never accept the idea of natural reproduction, especially with a species they consider primitive." Hansol looked at the data again. "What will you do?" "I don't know," Luna admitted. "But I want to understand this better before we tell anyone. Will you help us?" Hansol nodded. "Of course, but we must be careful. This discovery could change both our worlds forever." As Luna left the lab, Hansol looked at the test results again. The implications were enormous. The aliens' perfect engineered bodies were awakening to possibilities they had long forgotten. And somehow, Earth's primitive biology held the key to unlocking those ancient abilities. 2 months had passed since the alien researchers discovered the changes in their bodies. The morning sun found Mira sitting alone in the research center's garden, watching Earth birds fly overhead. She had never paid attention to such simple creatures before, but now she found herself fascinated by their natural grace. Hansol noticed her sitting there as he arrived at work. He had seen many changes in the aliens over the past weeks. Their perfect posture had softened. Their formal manner had relaxed. They had even started eating Earth food, claiming their usual nutrient solutions lacked something. "Good morning," he said, approaching carefully. "May I join you?" Mira nodded, touching her stomach unconsciously. "These Earth mornings," she said softly, "they feel different from anything I've experienced before." Hansol sat down beside her. "Different how?" "Everything feels more alive," she explained. "The air, the sunlight, even my own body. It's frightening, but also wonderful." Inside the lab, Luna and Nova were already working. They too had changed. Nova had started wearing her hair loose instead of in its usual tight style. Luna had developed a habit of humming while she worked, something unthinkable in their formal society. "Dr. Kim," Luna called as Hansol entered. "Could you look at these new test results?" The data showed more changes in their cellular structure. Their bodies were becoming more adaptable every day. But there was something else, something they hadn't expected. "Your hormone levels," Hansol said, studying the screen. They're shifting to match natural reproductive patterns. Nova dropped the tool she was holding. What does that mean? It means your bodies are preparing for the possibility of natural reproduction, Hansol explained. Something your species hasn't done for centuries. The three aliens exchanged worried looks. They had noticed other changes too. New emotions, new sensations, new ways of thinking about their future. We received another message from the Commonwealth today, Mira said, entering the lab. They want us to return for evaluation. They say our reports show concerning changes in our behavior. What will you do? Hansol asked. We don't know, Luna admitted. We've never questioned orders before. But now, she touched her chest, where her heart beat with a new rhythm she was still learning to understand. Later that day, Hansol found Mira in his office, looking at pictures of Earth families. Your species still forms emotional bonds, she said, even though it's not efficient or logical. We find it makes life richer, Hansol replied. Emotions may seem messy, but they give life meaning. We were taught that emotions were primitive, Mira said. That pure logic was the higher path. But lately, she stopped, struggling with words she had never needed before. Lately, Hansol encouraged. Lately, I feel things I can't explain, she continued. When you enter the room, my heart rate increases. When you speak, I want to move closer. When you smile, she touched her face, surprised to feel warmth there. Hansol washed her carefully. These are natural responses, he said gently. Your body is remembering what your species once knew, that there is value in connection, in feeling, in being alive. But what if they force us to leave? Mira asked, her voice showing fear for the first time. What if they try to fix us? That's your choice to make, Hansol said. But remember, you're not just changing. You're awakening to possibilities your species has forgotten. Sometimes moving forward means remembering what was lost. As the sun set outside, the three alien researchers sat together in their private room, facing the biggest decision of their lives. Stay and discover these new feelings, these new possibilities, or return to the safe, controlled world they had always known. The laboratory was quiet except for the soft hum of machines as Hansol worked late into the night. He had been studying the latest test results for hours, and what he found amazed him. The door opened, and Mira entered, followed by Luna and Nova. You called us, Mira said. What did you find? Hansol turned his screen so they could see. Look at these genetic patterns, he said. I've discovered why your bodies are changing. The three aliens moved closer to the screen. The data showed complex patterns of DNA, both human and alien, side by side. Your species didn't just engineer reproduction, Hansol explained. They also removed what they thought were unnecessary genetic patterns. But these patterns weren't useless. They were vital for adaptation and natural reproduction. Luna studied the screen carefully, and human DNA still has these patterns. Yes, Hansol said. Our DNA kept all its natural abilities. And now your bodies are trying to recover these lost patterns by adapting to match ours. Nova sat down heavily in a chair. That's why we feel so different here. Our bodies are trying to become whole again. There's more, Hansol said softly. He showed them another screen. These tests show that human DNA could help restore these patterns in your species. Natural reproduction between our species isn't just possible. It might be the key to saving your people. Mira touched the screen gently. Saving our people? What do you mean? Your reports mention growing problems with your engineered reproduction, don't they? Hansol asked. More failures each generation. The three aliens looked at each other in surprise. They hadn't told him about this growing crisis in their society. How did you know? Luna asked. The data shows it, Hansol explained. Each generation of engineering made your species more perfect, but also more rigid. Without the ability to adapt, your species is slowly losing its ability to survive. But natural reproduction with humans could fix this, Nova asked. Not just fix it, Hansol said. It could give your species back what it lost. The ability to adapt, to change, to grow stronger with each generation. Mira moved to the window, looking out at the night sky. Our government would never accept this. They believe our current method is perfect. Perfect isn't always better, Hansol said. Sometimes what seems like a flaw is actually a strength. Later that night, as the aliens discussed the discovery in their private room, Hansol heard their voices rise in unusual emotion. We can't ignore this, Luna was saying. Our people need to know the truth. They won't listen, Nova argued. They'll say we've been contaminated by Earth's primitive ways. Then we'll show them they're wrong, Mira said firmly. We'll prove that these primitive ways might save our future. The next morning, Hansol found all 3 aliens in his office. Their faces showed they had made an important decision. We want to continue this research, Mira announced. Not just for ourselves, but for our entire species. Even if it means going against your government, Hansol asked. Some truths are worth fighting for, Mira replied, her voice stronger than ever. Will you help us? Hansol nodded. Of course. But you should know, this path won't be easy. Your society might resist these changes strongly. We know, Luna said, but we've learned something important here on Earth. Sometimes the hardest path is the right one. As they began planning their next steps, none of them knew just how hard that path would become. The simple scientific project had grown into something much bigger. A chance to change the future of 2 species forever. The morning started with an alarm. Red lights flashed throughout the International Space Research Center as 3 Commonwealth ships entered Earth's atmosphere without permission. Hansol rushed to his office, knowing exactly why they had come. Mira, Luna, and Nova were already there, their faces showing both fear and determination. Their morning health scans had confirmed what they had suspected for weeks. All 3 were carrying new life, something their species hadn't experienced naturally in centuries. The Council knows, Mira said, her hand protectively over her stomach. They're coming to take us back. Hansol checked his computer screens. They've landed in the main courtyard. We have maybe 10 minutes. We won't go, Nova said firmly. They can't force us to endanger these new lives. The door burst open. Dr. Park, the center's director, rushed in. Commonwealth officials are demanding immediate access to your researchers, Dr. Kim. They say it's a matter of species security. Hansol stood up straight. These researchers are under Earth's protection now. They have the right to stay if they choose. Their bodies have begun natural reproduction processes, Luna explained to Dr. Park. If we return, our government will terminate these developments. They see natural reproduction as a threat to our engineered perfection. Dr. Park's eyes widened as he understood. I'll contact Earth's Council immediately. Stay here. Minutes later, heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. The door opened again, revealing 3 tall Commonwealth officials in formal uniforms. Their leader, Commander Tal, stepped forward. You will return with us immediately, he ordered. Your contamination by Earth's primitive biology must be contained. Mira moved forward, standing between her colleagues and the commander. We're not contaminated, she said. We're healing. Earth has helped us recover abilities our species lost long ago. These changes are dangerous, Commander Tal said. They threaten everything our society has built. No, Luna spoke up. They offer hope for our future. Our engineered reproduction is failing. Each generation becomes weaker. But here, we found a way to save our species. Hansol stepped forward. Your people chose to engineer out natural reproduction centuries ago, he said calmly. But that choice is threatening your survival now. These 3 researchers have discovered a way to restore what was lost. Commander Tal's face showed disgust. By breeding with primitives. This is unacceptable. What's unacceptable, Nova said, is watching our species slowly die because we're too proud to admit we made a mistake. Suddenly, Dr. Park returned with several Earth officials. The Earth Council has granted these researchers provisional citizenship, he announced. They have the right to stay and continue their research if they choose. Commander Tal's face darkened. This is an act of aggression against the Commonwealth. We will not allow. You have no choice, Dr. Park interrupted. Earth recognizes their right to self-determination. Any attempt to remove them by force will be considered a hostile act. The room fell silent. The three alien researchers stood together, their hands linked, facing the moment that would determine not just their future, but possibly the future of their entire species. Finally, Mira spoke, her voice clear and strong. We choose to stay, not just for ourselves, but for all our people. The children we carry represent hope, hope that our species can find its way back to natural life. Commander Tal stared at them for a long moment. The Commonwealth will not forget this betrayal, he said coldly. Then he turned and left, his officers following. As the sound of their ships taking off filled the air, Han Sol looked at the three researchers. They had chosen a difficult path, but perhaps the only one that could save their people. Now they just had to prove they had made the right choice. 1 week after the Commonwealth ships left Earth, Han Sol sat in a meeting with the Earth Council. The large screen on the wall showed angry Commonwealth representatives demanding the return of their researchers. These humans have corrupted our citizens, the Commonwealth speaker declared. They must be returned for treatment immediately. The Earth Council president remained calm. The researchers have chosen to stay of their own free will, she replied. They are now under Earth's protection. In the research center's medical wing, Mira, Luna, and Nova underwent their daily health checks. Their bodies continued to change, adapting more each day to carry their growing children. Han Sol monitored their progress carefully, amazed by how their alien biology merged with human genetic patterns. The Commonwealth has cut off all trade with Earth, Dr. Park announced, entering the medical wing. They're trying to force us to send you back. Mira looked up from her medical screen. They're afraid, she said, not just of us, but of what we represent. Natural reproduction threatens everything they believe about progress. More Commonwealth ships have entered the solar system, Nova reported, checking her communication device. They're gathering near Mars. Han Sol studied the latest test results. Your children are developing perfectly, he said. They show signs of both species' strengths, without the weaknesses that have troubled your engineered children. Luna touched her stomach gently. That's why they're so afraid. These children prove that their perfect system isn't so perfect after all. The next day, more Earth ships arrived to protect the planet from possible Commonwealth action. The situation was becoming dangerous. Han Sol worked harder than ever, gathering evidence to show that the natural reproduction process could save the alien species. Look at these genetic patterns, he explained to Earth and Commonwealth medical experts in a video conference. The hybrid DNA is more stable than either species alone. It could solve the reproduction problems that have troubled the Commonwealth for generations. Some of the Commonwealth scientists looked interested, but their political leaders quickly ended the conference. They didn't want to hear evidence that might prove them wrong. Why won't they listen? Nova asked, frustrated after another failed attempt to communicate with their home world. Change is hard, Han Sol said, especially when it challenges everything you believe about yourself. Mira spent more time in the garden now, watching Earth life continue despite the crisis. Our people have forgotten what it means to be part of nature, she told Han Sol one evening. We thought we could control everything through technology, but life finds its own way. The tension grew as more Commonwealth ships arrived. Earth's defenses remained strong, but everyone worried about what might happen next. Then something unexpected happened. A group of younger Commonwealth scientists contacted Earth secretly. They had reviewed Han Sol's research and wanted to know more. They too had noticed problems with their engineered reproduction system and wanted to find a solution. This is what we needed, Luna said excitedly. Others who can see the truth. The three researchers began sharing their experiences with these secret allies. They explained how their bodies had changed, how they felt more alive than ever before, and how the children they carried represented hope for their species' future. Hansol watched as support for their cause grew quietly within the Commonwealth. Change wouldn't come quickly or easily, but it was coming. The simple scientific project had grown into a movement that could transform both civilizations. As the sun set over the research center, Mira stood with Hansol watching the stars. "Do you think we'll succeed?" she asked. "Yes," he said simply, "because life always finds a way to survive. Your people just need to remember how to let it." The medical wing of the International Space Research Center was quiet except for three distinct sounds, the heartbeats of three new lives, the first natural-born children of the Commonwealth in centuries. Hansol checked the monitors carefully as Mira, Luma, and Nova rested with their newborn children. "All readings are perfect," he announced softly. "The children are healthy and strong." The babies had their mother's blue skin, but with a slight golden shimmer that came from their human heritage. Their eyes held both species' ability to see in different light spectrums, and their minds showed signs of both human adaptability and Commonwealth intelligence. Outside the medical wing, representatives from Earth and the Commonwealth waited anxiously. The birth of these children had captured the attention of both civilizations. Even those who had opposed the natural reproduction project wanted to see the results. "It's time," Hansol said to the three mothers. "Are you ready to show them?" Mira looked at her daughter, who gripped her finger with surprising strength. "Yes," she said. "They need to see that change isn't something to fear." The Commonwealth's chief medical officer entered first, followed by Earth's Scientific Council. They examined the children carefully, running tests that proved what Hansol had claimed all along. These hybrid children were healthier and stronger than any engineered in the Commonwealth's labs. "The genetic patterns are remarkable," the chief medical officer admitted. "These children show none of the weaknesses we've been struggling with in our engineered births, and their adaptive capabilities are beyond anything we've seen." News of the successful births spread quickly through both civilizations. The Commonwealth's younger generation, already questioning their society's rigid ways, saw this as proof that change was possible. More scientists and citizens began speaking out, calling for a return to more natural methods. 6 months later, Hansol stood in his office, looking at new data from across the Commonwealth. More couples had volunteered for the natural reproduction program, and the results were always the same: healthier children, stronger genetic patterns, and a new hope for their species' future. The Council has approved the establishment of a permanent Earth Commonwealth medical exchange, Dr. Park announced, entering the office. "They want you to lead it, Dr. Kim." Hansol looked surprised. "They're ready to work with us officially." "Times are changing," Mira said, entering with her daughter in her arms. "Our people have seen that progress doesn't always mean moving away from nature. Sometimes it means remembering what we've forgotten." The research center soon became the headquarters for a new era of cooperation between the two civilizations. Commonwealth citizens came to Earth to learn about natural reproduction, while human scientists helped them understand how to balance technology with natural processes. Luma and Nova had started teaching at the center, helping others understand the changes their bodies would go through. Their children played in the garden where the story had begun, showing how beautifully the two species could come together. One evening, Hansol found Mira in their usual spot in the garden. Their daughter slept peacefully in her arms, her blue skin glowing softly in the sunset. "Did you ever imagine it would end like this?" she asked. "When we first arrived, so sure of our superiority." Hansol smiled. "Life has a way of surprising us," he said. "Just like these little ones." He gently touched their daughter's hand. The garden had grown fuller since the project began. More earth plants now grew alongside carefully tended Commonwealth specimens, creating something new and beautiful, just like the children who played among them. As the sun set on another Earth Day, the research center stood as a symbol of what could happen when two civilizations looked past their differences and embrace change. The future would bring new challenges, but they would face them together, stronger for having learned that sometimes the best path forward is the one that leads back to nature.